Hey guys, my name is Andrew Henderson, nomadcapitalist.com, and the author of this book, Nomad Capitalist, on Amazon. This may be one of the most controversial videos that I've ever made. No doubt people are going to have strong opinions on both sides, but I wanted to talk about something that's in the book that I've received a lot of feedback on. And I wanted to share with you a meeting I had with a friend and a previous client the other day in which we discussed getting married versus getting laid. Now I promise I'm going to bring this back to the offshore nomad capitalist lifestyle that you are used to getting from me. I'm not suddenly becoming a dating coach. I'm not becoming a preaching moralizer. I'm not here to do any of that, but I do want to draw a distinction between what I've learned over the last 11 years, what I've learned from having 80,000 people come and fill out an application to get my help in the last almost 3 years now. And it all started with a lot of comments we've been getting from women about this book. 87% of our audience here on YouTube is men, but we have some very vocal women who are interested in our topic. And specifically, people have been writing me, women, on Instagram, on YouTube, and through our help desk saying, Andrew, we love chapter 5. You should talk more about this human side, love, children, and relationships. So I wanted to address that. I recently did get engaged, but I have lived, like I think all of us have, in the time of being single, the time of wanting something more casual, the time of wanting to be more serious. I think like the average person, I have gone back and forth at various times in my life, and there's been times in my life when I just wanted to be alone and not to seek anybody out. But I want to tie this into the offshore lifestyle because I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I brought back a conversation to him that I had at a conference 5 years ago. I generally don't go to conferences these days, but 5 years ago I was just starting Nomad Capitalist, and I went to one, and I was talking to a rather testosterone-rich group of young guys, and they were talking about businesses that they saw about teaching men how to be successful with women. And my advice, I had sold a few businesses and run a few businesses in the United States, and I had left the country permanently, and I was saying, well, in my opinion, if you're going to run a business, I don't care what your lifestyle is, but if you're going to choose a business, helping people get married is a lot better as a business than helping people get laid. Now, I like to practice what I preach. I like to live. I think that the best way to run a business, especially like where you're the face, is to live what you talk about and to be experienced and to guide others that way. But you know what? If you want to run a business teaching, helping men get married, but you want to be, on the other side, that's fine. But from a business point of view, it's better to help people get married. And I said, here's why. The people who want to get married are invested at a higher level. They're more serious. They're more likely to be genuine in terms of that relationship. I'm not saying they're more serious as people, but in terms of your interaction with them in a business, they're more serious because they want that specific thing. It's one thing over here to say, hey, I get laid every once in a while, and you can argue, oh, it's every day, it's every week, it's every month. Okay, fine. It's another thing to say, I want to be married. Well, you either are or you're not. It's a binary decision. And so if I'm running a business, I want to help people get married because there's a much greater investment. I recently watched a video, an old news video, where one of these matchmaking services you've seen in the In-Flight magazine charges up to $150,000 to help men meet their future wife. And people pay it. Now, the average person will watch that and say that's ridiculous, so that's a scam. But the guys who have $10 million don't care. They drive a $300,000 car and they pay $150,000 to outsource their dating life and to find a wife. On the other side, no one's paying $150,000 to have someone help them, have a one-night stand or a string of one-night stands. And so here's how I look at this in terms of the offshore nomad capitalist lifestyle. I'm not going to make a judgment on which camp you should be in. That's not my job, and ultimately you should do what feels best for you. Whatever's consensual is fine with me. But let me take the avatars that are traditionally seen. I understand there are guys who are going out there and having all kinds of flings who are more enlightened. But the average base people of getting laid versus getting married, the people who want to get married are invested at a much higher level because they want a high level deliverable. And so what I see in this marketplace of offshore stuff is two camps. You have probably a majority of people who are saying, sell me the $915 offshore company and I'll figure out how to do it from here. Because I'm James Bond and I can figure out how to drive any boat, plane, train, or airplane. And then you have a smaller camp of people who are saying, well, hold on, like I want to get somewhere. I want to get a specific deliverable, a specific feeling. Like being married, people say, well, if I'm married, yes, there's some downsides, but I have someone who's always there for me, I have love. People who want to get married are running towards something. They're running towards the idea of, whether you think it's right or not, they're running towards specific feelings, specific things that they want in their life. And there's this smaller camp of people who come into the offshore world who say, I want to pay a lot less taxes. I want to do so legally. I'd like to get a second passport, and I want to create this lifestyle. Here's what happens. Here's the next step. Once I save all those taxes, what's that going to mean? It's going to mean a higher lifestyle for me, for my family. It's going to mean potentially greater savings for the future. I've been in both camps, and I think that one is certainly more long-term thinking. One is more, you're just invested at a higher level. And so when people come to Nomad Capitalist, we've gotten over 80,000 applications in about 2.5 years. And when we go through and look at this, we notice some interesting patterns. People who are just starting out, people who are in this kind of, temporary, quick hit mindset, will come and will say, you know what, I'm not as concerned about being legal. Just give me the company, and as long as no one finds out, I'll be okay. There is that kind of mindset. There are people who think, hey, I'm smarter. I'm smarter than the government. Don't worry, they won't figure it out. That's their approach. The longer term approach is, Andrew, you know what? It's going to cost me more to set it up properly. It may be a little bit more complicated, but I realize that it's going to be complicated one way or the other. And I want to get it done properly. And then I want to stop worrying about it. Right? At the end of the day, if you ask people, why did you get married? There's a lot of people who's just like, oh, the single life. I got so sick and tired of it. I'm always chasing people. No one returns my calls. It's a When you're over here in this world where you're getting the $900 offshore company, I made a video about my experiment buying a cheap offshore company and how just bad it was and how I just got no further to what my goal would have been. If you're over here, I can promise you there's always going to be problems. It's always going to be one thing after the next. It's going to be the girl who goes out with you and then vanishes. It's going to be the person who you think is interesting and then the next day something happens. What I like is to take the longer term view of this offshore stuff and invest more up front. Not $150,000 for most business owners, but to invest like that guy who pays the matchmaker 150 grand because he says, you know what? I want everything that comes with this deliverable. I want everything that comes with having a wife. I want all of it. And I'm going to run towards that. See, the people over here, the people who are looking for the long-term solution in the offshore world are running towards what are they going to do with the tax savings? They're running towards the generational wealth. They're running towards all those benefits. And I've always said, don't run away from something, run towards something. Don't run away from the US, run towards what you want. Always the best advice. And so what I find the people who are over in this camp, people who just want the quick hit, it's, I feel like a sucker paying all these taxes. And I want to be smarter than everybody else. I know this firsthand, but it was interesting. I was this 10 years ago. And that's why I've done some of the things that I've told you over the years, including, shouting at the guy who for $15,000 was going to solve a problem that by telling him he was overpriced, I ended up paying more than that in taxes in like the next couple of months. But if you're in the quick hit camp, what I've seen is there's this great desire to be like, I don't want to be an idiot because I'm smarter than people. It's almost, there's something very interesting about it where it's not, I want to take that $100,000 that I'm going to save every year and put it back into my business. Because potentially a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people who are over in this camp have just started out. They just started their business 6 months ago or a year ago. I remember being that guy when taxes are theoretical. You've never even sent a check into the government yet, but yet you hate the idea of it. It's a lot worse, I can promise you, it's a lot worse when you're actually sending the checks in. And so the people who are in the quick hit category in the offshore world are the people who, not all the time, but I'm trying to kind of share what I've learned over 80,000 people, is the ones who are willing to cut corners, the ones who are eventually going to have problems. And they're the guys who, as I talked about in another video, they're the guys who message me, Andrew, my bank account is closing me down. My bank doesn't want my account in some fly-speck island anymore. I have a company in some tiny island and my good bank doesn't want me. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So there are perks to both. Listen, I mean, I think every guy can always say, oh, they can romanticize the single life if they're married. And they think back at all the positive things. Yes, this quick hit camp, it can be easier to set up. It's also easier to get into trouble. It's also easier to have problems. It's also easier to get stuck. It's also easier to have your bank account closed. It's also easier to be audited. It's also easier that you didn't do something properly, so it was too easy. And I'm not here to tell you, as I never am, I'm never here to tell you what you should do, but I want to share my personal experience over 11 years and my personal experience having seen tens of thousands of people who come and they share. I'm over in this camp because I realized I want to do things properly. And what I realized not so many years ago with Nomad Capitalist was that I was always hiring the best lawyers. I was paying good accountants. I was overpaying for services. That's been my philosophy for a while. And I realized it would be disingenuous of me to offer some kind of low-priced, $1,000, get your company set up, and then figure it out yourself service. If I drove a car, it wouldn't be a Kia. And I'm sure that if I went out and bought a Bentley, there would be people who would say, wow, what a sucker, he spent $300,000 for a car. But other people who spend $300,000 for a car wouldn't say you're a sucker, So the bottom line is this. Do you want to be in the quick hit camp where you just set up the offshore company, you know better than everybody else? Or do you want the category where, let's just do this properly. I want to sit back and relax, and I just want the results to come to me and to keep coming over and over and over and over again. I had been at one time, when I was very young, in the quick hit camp, because it was fearful to spend money. That's why I shouted at the guy for $15,000. He could have saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next couple of years in my businesses. But I didn't hire him, and I had to learn the hard way. And so, really, what it boils down to for me is attitude. This is one of the big things. We talk a lot about mindset, but even deeper than mindset is attitude. I've had to learn the hard way that my attitude of being 22, 23 years old and saying, I'm smart. Who else is making $210,000 a year? I'm smarter than everybody, right? I've been that guy. I was that guy a long time ago. And you realize, okay, you're a punk. He's 22, and a lot of people are making more than $200,000. Heck, there's a guy paying almost $200,000 just to find a wife. When you're in that camp, when you're in that quick hit camp, you think, nah, that's not possible. No one's paying $150,000 for that. Or, no one's paying for a Bentley. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. And there's an attitude of being open that there's things that you don't know. When I go and I try and engage with people on stuff that I am not familiar with, I don't really go with my own agenda because I want to know what they have to say. They're the expert. And so, do you think you know better than everybody else? Do you think that you can set up some cheap company and in this day and age of CRS and FATCA and everything else that you're going to fool everybody? And you're going to slide under the radar, and you're going to be able to get away with, breaking CFC rules or, whatever else. If so, then you're in the quick hit category. Go out, watch my video, and learn what to avoid when hiring a cheap offshore incorporator, and go out and set up your company and kind of shoestring together a plan. What I've learned, and what I never knew when I was learning this, was that there are always people who were paying this $150,000 to get their problem solved at a high level. I never knew that because I was too close-minded to the fact that I had all the answers and that I was smarter than everybody. And now I realize, we're always learning. I may be one of the best people in this area, but compared to everything else, I'm really not the smartest guy by any means. And so, which camp do you want to be in? To me, it is the constant evolving kind of what's the trick, what's the tactic, what I have to say of the average person who wants to get laid, or it's the person who wants the longer term solution of getting married. It applies, I think, to many things in life. And I think it applies very much to your offshore strategy and how committed you are to getting a result that actually works for the long term rather than works for the night. Now, if you're new to all of this, I definitely recommend you get the book on Amazon because it's really a one-on-one intro. We don't put together particular plans or particular strategies. We don't tell you exactly what you should do because everyone is different. The same way that the matchmaker isn't setting everyone up with a leggy blonde from Slovenia. I can't give you the exact plan to do in the book, but I hope that the book opens most people's eyes to what the possibilities are of living a nomad capitalist lifestyle, legal tax reduction, dual citizenship, putting your money all around the world and taking part in going where you're treated best. So the book is a good 101 intro to that if you haven't gotten it. I think it's 269 pages of good info with some specifics. If you have been watching for a while and you've maybe been trying to figure this stuff out, then I hope I've opened your eyes to the fact that there are two different approaches. There's the quick hit, cheap approach of people just churning out 1,000 offshore companies a day, churning out 1,000 bank account openings a day that, secret, half the time don't work. And then there's a more holistic approach. If you're looking for that, that's kind of what we talk about at Nomad Capitalist. You should start by checking out more of our advanced strategies at nomadcapitalist.com, and we'd be happy to serve you. But it's really important to understand what you're trying to get out of this experience. As one of the, I remember one of the big guys in the information marketing space in the dating world said, if you don't define your desired outcome, you won't be successful. Your desired outcome could be getting laid. It could be a one-night stand. Your desired outcome could be getting married. If you're just going out with a woman and just saying, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, you're already screwed. So before you go down this offshore journey, what is it you want? We have other videos where we talk about figuring out what you want and figuring out when you're ready, but you have to define that, and you have to really define which camp are you in. That will define your ability to be successful.